pressed the right button this time. This is the Auburn podcast. I pressed the newscast button originally. It's totally different. Zach Blackerby here with you. Painter Sharpless. Happy draft day, bud.
Happy day to you. I'm trying to do my best impersonation of the GOAT, Dan Peck.
Daniel Allen Peck, right?
I don't think I'm doing it.
Yeah, you're not laid back enough. You're not relaxed enough.
I know, I'm tense. This isn't my natural seated position.
All right, yeah, so we previewed this a little bit yesterday. But yeah, the draft is tonight, and I think this will stay relevant for a few days. So if you're listening to this and it's post-first round, if you're listening to this on Friday, I think it still applies because I don't think any of the guys we're going to be talking about will be drafted in the first round. But I'm going to bring up guys in order the way I think they're going to go. I think you'll disagree with me on some, and the ones you disagree with me on, say, like, actually, I don't think he goes next. And
10-4.
And that we can talk about that too. But let's start things off. I think Jarrett Stidham will be the first guy drafted for Auburn. You think Jamel Dean will, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but you cool starting with Stidham?
Yes, I think that's the one where most people are wanting to talk about the quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's just naturally going to kind of get more of a draw because of the position for sure. So, I've said this on the podcast before. I said it when we hosted the lunch break together. But I, for some reason, have always just been able to picture Jarrett Stidham in a Steelers jersey. And just looking at it now, and with news coming out yesterday with Big Ben restructuring his deal and extending it out.
A little bit longer than I would have thought.
Yeah. So the timing there doesn't make as much sense to me anymore for Stidham, just because they're paying Ben through the end of that deal, and if it's going to be that much longer, I just think the timing is off. Versus when you have to pay Stidham and you're going to pay him with not being that proven. So I'm going to say I'm doing it. I think the best situation for Jarrett Stidham to go to is to end up on the New England Patriots.
That's long made sense to me. I think it is the best situation for Jarrett Stidham. I think if you want to talk about another likely landing spot, the Dolphins, to me, make some sense. Now, you could say, well, the Dolphins may end up using their pick on a higher, in a higher round,
draft,
and
right.
so it might not be Stidham if that's the case. But if they wait and go with a guy somewhere between the third and sixth round, to me, that makes sense.
I like that pick a lot, and I hadn't really pictured him with Miami, but I mean that's a situation that they need a quarterback. Despite paying Ryan Tannehill a few years ago, he is not in their long-term plans. I thought it was crazy when they drafted him. I believe he was a top 10 pick. I think he went 9th the year he was drafted. I don't have that in front of me.
Are there just guys like that? And sometimes you get them wrong, but there are guys, and when it turns out that way, you're like, as little draft knowledge as because I do not pretend to be an expert in this, but when Tannehill was coming out, I was like, there's no way that guy is going to be in the league in 10 years having just a solid career. Like, I'm not expecting him to win a Super Bowl. That's a high bar to set. But is he even going to be in the league? And, maybe he will be because he's lasted longer than I thought he would, honestly. But it's been a train wreck.
Yeah, and the thing that's crazy to me is when they get these guys and then they end their rookie deal and then they get paid. I mean, because my thing is Andy Dalton. Like, I do not understand how Andy Dalton is a starting quarterback. I mean, the Bengals have had some of the best weapons around them for years.
A.J. Green,
Andy Dalton has ruined A.J. Green's career.
Think about how much better he would be remembered if he had a guy that was throwing to him that was competent.
Right. It's crazy. But Stidham to Miami, I'm cool with that.
And I think the Patriots make a lot of that's where I hope he goes because I want Jarrett Stidham to succeed. I think he got too much criticism for a lot of moving parts, whether it was the friction at play calling, whether it was the bad offensive line, whether it was an ineffective run game at times, whether you want to look at it as an experience or injury. You had two good wide receivers in Davis and Slayton. But I didn't think that he really had the same level of help he had in 2017.
Here's going to be my argument for why I don't think it's a perfect scenario in Miami for Stidham.
Okay.
Here's my argument. Is I think whatever team drafts Stidham, the best case scenario for Stidham is to not be forced into a starting quarterback competition right away.
I think if he can sit on the bench for at least 2 years, that's a great scenario for him.
Right. But I think in Miami, because Miami fans do not like Ryan Tannehill. And it's like, I think if you draft him in the third round, if you draft him Friday night, I think they're going to want to start him.
There's going to at least be the idea that that's a competition.
So that is my argument against that.
I think that's a fair point. If you're the Dolphins and you're looking at it as a long-term project, the pressure is on either in year one or certainly year two for whoever you get to be a viable option.
Honorable mention for this, in my opinion, is backup to Rivers with the LA Chargers.
I think that's that's one that makes sense because like Big Ben, I thought he was heading toward the back end of his career. So we'll see. I think that one makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Jamel Dean, we mentioned him a second ago. The best fit, the best case scenario for Jamel Dean, in my opinion, I've got two, Painter. I got two. One
Me too.
Sweet.
And we agree on one of them.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I bet it's the second team I want to mention then. The first one is Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns. Is that the one you agree on? No, it's not. Okay. It's just kind of a mentally, I can picture Jamel Dean in a Browns jersey for whatever reason. I can just kind of see it.
Well, you mentioned physicality.
Yeah, that defense is all about, they're getting physical players across the board around that roster. They've really built it up. And even when the Browns were bad, their defense was actually still pretty good. I mean, the AFC North, they've played aggressive defense, for several years now. When you look at the Ravens, you look at the Steelers, you look at the Bengals. I mean, those guys have always had good defenses despite having up and down years. But I can just physically picture him in my head jamming guys at the line of scrimmage in a Browns jersey. Now, from a scheme standpoint, the Legion of Boom has been disbanded. They are literally all gone. But Seattle, Pete Carroll,
they've got needs now.
Yeah. And they're good at drafting.
Needs.
Yes. You
love it when I say it.
I really do. I do. There's no sarcasm there. I do love it. But they like aggressive, scrappy defensive backs. And I think Jamel Dean would be really good in Seattle.
We agree there. I'll also go with the Steelers. I think from a scheme fit, the Steelers may not make quite as much sense as the team you just mentioned in the Seahawks, but they're in need at the defensive back position. So I think that's where you could see him go. And, again, he's a guy that I think might get picked up earlier than Stidham. That's one area we've disagreed in. But I agree with you on the Seahawks, and I think the Steelers in some ways makes sense as well. I think from a scheme standpoint, you look at the way the Seahawks have played under Pete Carroll, it may make more sense in Seattle.
Yeah, I'm looking at Pittsburgh's defensive backs here. Let's see. Yeah, they need nickel help, and I think you can put Jamel Dean in the middle of the field because of that physicality that we talked about. So I like that. They do have Joe Hayden, and I love Sean Davis out of Maryland, but you need more than that in today's league. So, you're playing 5-6 defensive backs all the time. So I like the Steelers as well. There's kind of the Steelers popped up in my head with Jamel as well. So I agree, and I like that pick. But I had a Steelers point with Jarrett, and then the next guy I'm going to mention, I have him as the Steelers.
So you don't want to be too
So I
repetitive.
I didn't want too much Pittsburgh. But I'm glad you said it.
Steelers
for sure.
loving the Tigers in your scenario.
All right, so you like Jamel Dean for the Steelers in Seattle,
Correct.
and I like it with Seattle and Cleveland. So I think all those are good situations. And where he's going to get picked, he's going to make the roster. So I think the third guy taken is Darius Slayton.
We agree.
Yeah, and so I have two teams that we've already mentioned so far, Steelers. Just because, once again, this is the best situation for the Auburn players. If you're a receiver and you go play for the Steelers, I don't know if it's something in the water up there, but every receiver that they take, really with the exception of former Auburn Tiger Sammy Coates, they've all just had pretty solid starts to their career. I mean, they do a good job developing their wide receivers there. So I think that'd be really valuable for Slayton. You could be a number 2 or number 3 guy. Juju Smith-Schuster is the guy there. They moved on from Antonio Brown, so there are targets for grab there. And then another group that I like, because he does not need to be the guy wherever he goes. Slayton is not going to be a number 1 receiver in his career. Could he possibly be a solid number 2 down the road? I think he could be. And so put him in L.A. with the Chargers. Let Phillip Rivers throw to him, and they've got a lot of mouths to feed up there, but I think he got to blend in and get 20 or 30 catches in his rookie career.
I see this as either a landing spot for the Panthers or the Packers. I think that the Panthers are interesting. They've been Auburn heavy of recent, even some talks that they might be interested in finding a backup like Jarrett Stidham for Cam Newton. So that has been a recent development. I think the Panthers could use some help at wide receiver. Of course, they departed with Kelvin Benjamin. They did draft a first rounder last year and more, but I think that Slayton goes somewhere probably after the third round. So I think you're looking at a value position for the Panthers at wide receiver. Then the Packers have overhauled some of their wide receivers in the last few seasons. I think you are perhaps a little bit more optimistic on Slayton if you think that his ceiling, and you're probably not wrong about this. I just don't see him being a number 2.
I am higher on Slayton than most people are.
And so I think, to me, it seems like if he lands at the Packers and can be a solid number 3 option because of his athleticism, I like the way that Aaron Rodgers probably, I don't know about improves the play of Slayton, but I think those two could complement one another.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy about the Packers roster. I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers, so he's going to make guys better, but it's like, all right, they've got Devontae Adams and then Randall Cobb left. So, I mean, there's lots of receptions up for grabs there, too. But, you mentioned the Panthers, and I like that. I mean, Auburn fans here that, are now Panthers fans because of Cam. I mean, it's very clear, like, please get Cam a receiver, right? And, you mentioned more in the first round last year. The year before in the second round, an early second-round pick, they got Curtis Samuel, which I still don't think they're using him right. But, I mean, he has talent, and maybe he takes that step. But, yeah, could he blend in and be, the third or fourth guy in that offense? I think he has the ability to. So I like that fit. I like both of those.
Who's next?
I got Ryan Davis next. You okay with that?
What about Dontavius Russell is my only sticking point because
let's do Dontavius next. That's a good call. Because I think there's a chance Ryan doesn't get drafted.
Right.
Russell will get drafted.
It may be in the 7th round. It may be in the 5th round. But I think Russell almost certainly gets drafted. I would be surprised if he didn't. With Ryan, we both want him to be drafted, but
right.
I don't know if it happens.
Yeah, so the thing with Russell is he just plays a position that's not as important in today's game as it used to be, right? I mean, if you play defensive tackle and can rush the passer, I mean, just what they've looked for in interior defensive linemen has changed. But you still, on your roster, you still need 300-pound defensive tackles. You don't use them that much, but you still need them. And so because of the usage rate going down, you get drafted later. I mean, that's just kind of it. It is what it is. That's our favorite phrase.
Wow.
It's been a few days since we used it. But
let's bring that back into the mainstream.
I got Russell going to the Cardinals.
That makes sense.
They've got they don't really have a guy that's over 300 pounds. So that's kind of...
Neither do I.
That's kind of what I'm going with. So this is one of the ones I feel less good about. But, I'll say the Cardinals.
Well, I feel like there are a number of places he could land. I'm going to go with the Rams. I think they struggled with their interior linemen at least in the run game. Let's not criticize their interior run too much, as Aaron Donald was.
Ndamukong Suh wasn't bad either.
Right, but I think that Wade Phillips would like to improve their rush defense, and I think they could go high with this and get someone perhaps from Clemson as a potential option. But if they wait or if they feel like they need some depth at the position, I think the Rams are a potential landing spot for a good run stopper.
Okay. I like that fit. Yeah, you mentioned Wade Phillips. He had success in Dallas with Jay Ratliff. A little bit different type of player, but, former Auburn Tiger.
Shout out.
So, okay, cool. You want to go Ryan next or Deshaun next?
Let's go Ryan, because I think this is my opinion. I'd be curious to hear your take. I think Ryan is much more likely to get drafted than Deshaun is.
I agree, which is kind of crazy when you look at production, but it's just Deshaun, as far as size at a middle linebacker, that's just not what teams want.
Maybe a dumb comparison, but because height is an issue, like I look at Jared Harper and Deshaun Davis and go, man, if those guys were 3 or 4 inches taller, this could be a very different story.
I don't think it's a dumb comparison at all. I think that's spot on. So, and it stinks because it's nothing they can do to fix it.
Right. Like
it's not getting faster. It's not getting stronger. Or getting smarter.
You'd love to have all those things, sure, but I think with Deshaun, the biggest knock on him will be his size.
Yeah, and, I think you'd say with Ryan too, but there's going to be a team that talks with Deshaun, and it's going to be like, gosh, I want this guy in my locker room.
That's a good point. I think, like you say, this is the thing that you constantly bring up. One team needs to love you.
Right, especially
I think
that late.
His personality and his leadership, the things they're going to hear about the way he commanded respect from his teammates in the locker room, all of those things are going to benefit him.
Right. I think I just talked myself into. I think Deshaun's more likely to get drafted.
10-4.
Let's do that next.
10-4.
I got him going to the Baltimore Ravens. I think that's the best situation for him. Example: can you name a linebacker for the Ravens? I couldn't. I was literally like sitting here thinking, going through teams. I was like, well, I can name a linebacker there. I can name a linebacker there. Then I'm like, Ravens? Nah, and then I looked it up, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, the only guy that I was kind of familiar with is Tyus Bowser, which is he's a different kind of player than Deshaun is. So I think he is most likely to make a roster spot with the Baltimore Ravens. And we've seen emotional leaders for the Ravens in the past. Ray Lewis worked out. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to go with.
Here is one where I just don't have a team. I think the one that you picked makes sense because I'm looking at it from, or trying to look at it from Deshaun Davis's lens. If he does not get drafted, then I think you look around, if you're him, and you're going, where do I have the best chance of succeeding? And a team like that could make a lot of sense. So because I think he goes undrafted, I don't have an answer as to where that would be. But I think the team you picked is a certainly good option. And for Deshaun, he's going to look, I think, at, hey, where can I make a roster? And, is there another team that you can think of like the Ravens that's in pretty desperate need, at least off the top of your head, for linebacker depth?
I mean, that's definitely the worst one. I mean, New England needs linebackers, but like at least they have Hightower. Like Dante Hightower is a good linebacker. But it's like with the Ravens,
you don't see anything there.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, if you are a middle linebacker or any kind of linebacker, you have a much better chance of making a roster there. And that's kind of the interesting thing about getting drafted in the 7th round versus being undrafted. The pay cut is a little bit more, but you're able to diagnose. If you don't get drafted, you're able to sit back, talk with your agent, diagnose the situation at all these places that are kind of offering you a training camp deal, and you can say, I've got less competition there. I'm more likely to make it.
Yeah, I mean, is there somewhat of an argument to be made that sometimes not getting drafted is better than being drafted in the last round, depending on who you are and the fit, because you might end up going to a team where you have more success. It's more organic because you walked into that situation yourself.
Yeah, there are arguments for both sides because, I mean, if you get drafted, I mean, you get the same length of time. If you're drafted with the first pick of the 2nd round or the last pick of the draft, you get a 3-year deal. Now, the money changes, obviously, but all the picks after the 1st round are 3-year deals with the team option for the 4th year. So you get more stability there. I mean, you can still get cut, and the signing bonuses are going to be less and all that. But if you get if you go undrafted and you get invited to camp, it's just kind of everything is kind of based on if you make the team or not. So it just kind of depends. You get to pick your situation and kind of form your own reality if you're undrafted. Like that's what Jonathan Jones and Brandon King did, and that worked out. They've won Super Bowls, so that's exciting.
Just because I keep mentioning this team, the Steelers are in need of linebackers, although I think they need it so much that they're likely to use a higher draft pick.
Yeah, and you could argue that with the Ravens as well.
That's fair.
So mentally, I could picture him in a Cowboys jersey, but they're good there. With Sean Lee, and they drafted Van Der Esch.
What is it about
I don't know, man.
That star that attracts you, or that team, the way that they play defense, that where you see him fitting?
I don't know. I could just kind of picture Jerry Jones just talking the guy up.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he would like Deshaun Davis.
I think he would love Deshaun Davis.
That personality.
Yeah, for sure. And he's marketable. Once he gets in, like if he ever gets in a starting role, like whoever has him, he will be a fan favorite, much like he was here at Auburn. So, all right, Ryan Davis next.
Yes, and I'm excited about this one.
How about you go first on this one?
All right, hear me out, because I am obviously playing to my own crowd.
And once again, we are talking the best situation for the Auburn player.
Okay, but I'm breaking that a little bit here.
Okay.
2 teams, one of them the Bills. They do need help at wide receiver, so that would make sense. But partially, I would just like to see him in a Bills uniform.
Is Zay Jones still there?
Yes, he is. You're right. So
that they like that type of receiver. Then you can make the argument that they like that type of receiver, or you can make that argument that
they're good there.
Well, Zay Jones is there. Do they need more than one? But
yeah, that's a good point. You may have just killed my argument.
No,
but
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
That's okay. I still hope that he lands in a Bills jersey.
Sure.
For his sake, maybe he doesn't. Washington also could use help at the wide receiver position. Can you think of any reason to shoot down Washington?
I think Jamison Crowder left there, right? Is Jamison Crowder still with the Washington Redskins? I feel like he left during free agency this year. So
he's with the Jets now.
Yeah, so that's a great fit. I like that.
10-4.
I like that. I like the Washington one.
Don't you dare take Ryan away from the Bills.
As someone who adamantly cheers against the Bills.
Which I don't know why, because your team just steamroll. Like, why do you care what? I mean, I don't think you do. I think it's like how Auburn and Alabama
play them twice a year,
Yeah, it's always nice to pat your little brother on the head. Just like, nice try, buddy.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, cool.
I hope my significant other doesn't ever hear that part of the podcast.
Do you think my wife certainly does not listen to this podcast?
No, I don't think Sarah cares one way or the
other. Right.
She thinks I'm an idiot anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, Lee's asked, like, cool, you spend a lot of time on it. How much money are you making from it? And I'm like, it's fun.
That's not important.
It's fun.
The reason we do this is for love of the game.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. This is my version of having a blog. That's kind of the way I look at it. And she's like, whatever, okay.
Dear diary.
Yeah. I had a great day today. Painter looked at me in the hallway.
Oh, wow.
All right, so Ryan Davis, I've got with the Rams is one of them.
That makes sense. We talked about that, and I like that a lot because, like Slayton, you pointed out, he's not going to be a number one guy. That shouldn't be his focus, but there's enough talent and a really great offensive-minded coach with a young quarterback there. There's a lot of reasons to think he could be a solid option.
Right. Cooper Kupp also, their slot guy had an injury later in the year last year, so they're going to kind of need a guy that's going to be able to play inside at least till he gets back. Ryan Davis is a great example of that. And it's obviously a great system as far as being able to scheme guys open, and you'd probably be the number 3 or 4 guy in that offense, at least. So I think that's a good situation for Ryan, or really any receiver that makes the roster for the Rams.
Yeah, that would be fun to see. I would love, I selfishly said would like to see him at the Bills. For the sake of his career, it's hard to find a landing spot right now as a wide receiver, especially a wide receiver like Ryan that might be better.
Yeah, and then I got my selfish pick.
Ooh. Don't you do it.
He follows in Julian Edelman's footsteps and becomes the next great slot receiver in New England.
While I should be opposed to that as a Bills supporter, I think if you are a slot receiver and you're playing for Bill Belichick, you like your chances.
What if Stidham to Davis was becomes the new like Brady to Edelman? In both of my predictions, that could totally happen.
So would all of the Carolina Panthers fans in about 3 years become Patriots fans? Because I think Cam is getting closer to the end of his career than he was drafted in 2011. Like, he's coming up on 10 years, and he plays a very physical style of football for a quarterback.
There's plenty of room on the hype train, guys.
There we go.
Come on.
And
by the way, it's really fun being a Patriots fan. It's more fun being a Pats fan than a Panthers fan. I promise you.
Yeah,
I promise you.
That's an argument that I don't think is difficult to make.
All right, there's 2 more guys that I want to mention.
All right.
There's 2 more guys. I think they both go undrafted, but I think one guy will be more sought out after, and I think some of that's just position. I'm going to go Andrew Williams next.
That makes sense.
You okay with that?
I like that because of his versatility. Yeah, you take that.
Versatility, and I think, you look at Devereaux Lawrence a few years ago. I think he's better than Devereaux Lawrence was, or at least just as good. Just the team and the defensive line that he played on, I think is just, it's better. It's deeper. So he didn't play as much as Devereaux did, but Devereaux signed an undrafted deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I can see Andrew Williams doing the same thing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, So that's kind of my situation. They showed that they were open to letting Devereaux have a few years there. I don't believe he's there anymore, but that's my pick, because I think Andrew Williams is just as talented coming out of Auburn as the guys that we've seen in the past. He just didn't play as much because there was more depth.
Yeah, Lawrence, I believe, with the Browns.
Okay, good for him.
And he's 6'2", and you look at Williams' body at about 6'5", 260 or so.
And I think he can do more. I think you can put him at defensive end. I think in some situations you can scoot him into that 4-eye or that 3-eye technique. I don't think he can go much farther in than that. But, also I think he's athletic enough to stand him outside. I also think he's willing to play special teams and has the athleticism to move and play special teams. So, we talked about this off air, Painter, but when you're building those roster spots that are the 45th to the 53rd roster spots on your team that you're dressing out, or you can only dress out 45, but when you're building and constructing a roster in the offseason, you want those last few spots to be as valuable and as versatile as possible. And I think Andrew Williams makes a great case for that. And so I'm picking the Bucs because, every team needs guys like this, but I'm just picking the Bucs for a good situation for Andrew Williams just because Devereaux Lawrence did it a few years ago, and I think it's kind of a similar situation.
What about your last one? Because I'm with you on Williams.
Okay.
I'm curious. I think that he could have a career not unlike Lawrence, who you mentioned, or not unlike Brandon King, who you've already mentioned, where he didn't play a lot at Auburn, but he finds a way to be useful to a team and stays there for 4 or 5 years. And maybe, if you prove yourself consistent enough, you get that second contract.
Yeah, it's a good character guy, too. So, I mean, you don't have to worry about anything negative when you sign this guy.
This last one intrigues me.
Chandler Cox?
Yes, because I just don't see where he fits. But
I've got an argument. You want to hear it?
Yes.
I'm going to say the best situation for him, the Green Bay Packers.
I mean, that would be awesome for him when you look at some of their needs and then you look at who he'd be playing with.
And look at who's had success in that similar position. They love using hybrid guys. Remember John Kuhn? When he had a great stint with the Packers. I think he left 2 seasons ago, I believe. But just that willingness and that athleticism. No, not the best blocker. John Kuhn wasn't. Chandler Cox isn't either. He's fine at the college level. He is not an NFL blocking tight end. He is not James Devlin.
Right, like Prosh and him had a similar role, but they had different strengths.
Right, and there were times when he would motion out and be empty, and he'd be the far right receiver. He'd be lined up at Z, and Stidham would throw it to him on like a 3-yard out. That happened a few times, and so I like the versatility there. And the Packers are a team that we've seen do that in the past.
They've used that. That's a good. I think that's a fair point. I hope so for him.
Gosh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, a guy that started for 4 years at Auburn and became a fan favorite and
he's another likable guy too. Yeah.
Right. So while I'm not sure, I really just don't see it. I don't know where to put him. I think you make a good argument.
Yeah, that's just kind of what I thought, because I'm just looking and I don't think he can make a roster as a pure downhill blocking fullback. Like, he's not Jay Prosh, as you mentioned. I don't think he's James Devlin. All these guys that you see, and so few teams use fullbacks now. It's like, it's just not as valuable of a position. But the skill set that he is able to do from a fullback, and he did it at Auburn as an H-back. I think we've seen kind of John Kuhn do that. And, can he be a poor man's John Kuhn, and can the Packers pick him up undrafted and not pay him anything and kind of get the most out of one of those 45th to 53rd roster spots on that team? I think there's a chance of it. So I think that's the best situation for Chandler Cox.
Are we leaving anyone out? Anyone on the fringe? Is there someone that we're going to get an angry tweet from us because it's like, hey, you idiots, which I don't disagree with that part. It's like,
Montavious Atkinson, I just don't see it. I mean, linebackers are getting smaller, and he's a big guy. And didn't he run he ran a really slow 40 time. If I'm remembering that correctly, look it up real quick if you don't mind. But I just don't see how his game translates to the NFL's game. And I hate that for him because he had a pretty good career at Auburn, and I think he was kind of overlooked a lot. Well, I'm looking stuff up now, and actually, he's measured out better than I thought. 6'1", 219 pounds. So, that's from 2017. I really thought he was bigger than that. All right, and then just looking at draftanalyst.com, this has him right at 6 foot, 225 pounds, which is fine. I mean, similar battle as Davis, with a 4.78 40. No, this is from draftanalyst.com. Small but hardworking linebacker who gets the most from his ability, displays good change of direction, solid movement skills, and quickness. The negatives: plays at his 40 time and shows just average speed, lacks height, which causes mismatches in coverage, not stout at the point of the attack. Atkinson gets the most from his ability, but has marginal measurables for the next level. He's a backup interior linebacker who must earn his wage on special teams. So
if he could find a roster on special teams, that seems to be...
maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, I'm pulling for the guy. I think that I'm trying to think of guys that Auburn is losing this year, and those are kind of all the ones that stand out to me.
I think this is going to be fun to watch. I think no one goes high in this draft for Auburn, but I think you look at Dean and Stidham, you like both of their upside. Slayton, as we talked about, is an intriguing guy depending on where he lands, and then Deshaun Davis, if he can find a way to overcome some of and I guess you could say the same thing about Ryan, some of the obvious things that people criticize them for, some of which that's out of their control, they will end up being very well liked. So this is an intriguing class for Auburn. Not anyone that's a superstar, but then you look at Stidham, it'll be interesting to see. There are analysts out there who spend a lot of time breaking this down, and they think Stidham could have a multi-year career as a starter in the NFL.
Yeah. Darrell Williams is who I was thinking of when as far as the bigger bodied linebacker. My brain went out there. So, so I mean that's I think those are literally all the ones that are eligible that we talked about. So cool. All right. So have fun watching the draft tonight, whether you're listening on Thursday or Friday or Saturday. So follow Painter on Twitter at PaintSharpless. Follow me on Twitter at ZBlackerby. This has been another edition of the Auburn Podcast.